Are you seeing Australians scale back their US travel plans?
Look, very much so, and it depends on what they're going there for. For example, in that March quarter, our corporate business was pretty flat, maybe up just a little bit on last year, whereas our leisure business was down a lot. But in April, it does appear to have got a lot worse. And I know our Canadian business of Canadians going to the States is down quite a lot. So, it varies a bit, but I think the way it's heading, April and May are going to be a lot worse for travel to the US in terms of numbers out of Australia. And I was just talking to someone from G Adventures and Intrepid need some more adventure tour operators, and they're down 40–50%. And just people going to other destinations effectively.
So essentially avoiding the US?
Yeah, well, for a couple of reasons. Some people don't like what Trump's saying and doing. Other people are worried about border control and, the conditions of coming into the US and whether they've complied with everything. So there's a couple of reasons why that is down, particularly out of Australia.
You touched on it, but corporate travel seemed flat or a bit higher. Is it really leisure travellers that are driving this trend, or do you think it will spill over into the corporate market?
I think it'll spill over a little bit into the corporate market, but if people have got to go for business, they'll go. Generally, most of them are experienced travellers. They'll accept that going to the States is something they have to do. Whereas leisure travellers have a choice. They can go to, instead of going to the national parks in the US, which are fantastic, they could go to South America, to Patagonia or something like that. So they have a choice, and that's what we're seeing, that a significant proportion of leisure travellers are choosing elsewhere because either they don't agree with what Trump's doing, or they are a little bit scared of getting into the border control, through the border control.
So what's happening with US ticket prices then? If anything, are they falling as a result?
I believe so, that the numbers, particularly out of Australia, but certainly our business in Canada, the road traffic is apparently down about 30% into the US from Canada, but we're seeing our flight travels out of Canada down 40–50%, and I think that's the Canadians trying to send a message to the States to some extent.
And of course you have offices all over the globe. Where are you seeing the most significant pullback on travel to the US? You mentioned Canada. Yeah,
Canada by far the most significant. And as I said, out of Australia, particularly leisure travellers on, adventure tours like Intrepid or G Adventures, but also Europe. UK and Europe, it's down significantly, not as much, more like 20–30% in the leisure markets, and the corporates are quite flat, where you'd expect it to probably be increasing year on year. So, there is an impact here, and the leisure impact seems to be significantly more, and it would appear this is going to cost the US tourism industry, quite a lot. Perhaps not so much in the business, except for those countries affected by the tariffs.
Well, you have a significant footprint in the US under a number of different brands. Is it going to cost you?
Yeah, good point. Most of our brands there are business brands, and most of our business is done on business, and a lot of that is within the US, within the United States, or to Canada and South America. We don't expect to be too heavily impacted there in a negative way. Our leisure business out of the States, I don't think will have much impact. I think the Americans will still travel out, internationally and domestically.
Well, at the half-year result, you said you were banking on a bigger second half because of a number of factors, and a couple that stood out when I was reading that statement were a lower interest rate environment, stable geopolitical environment, fueling a more confident consumer, and growth in your corporate Traveller USA program. Are you still confident these aspects will deliver at the full year?
Look, it's just a bit early to say now, but there's no doubt that these macroeconomic issues, particularly what's happening in the States, particularly what is happening with Trump, it's almost certainly going to have some impact. At the moment, it's not that obvious. The first quarter, there was some impact, as I've said before, but it looks like April, probably May, is going to be make things a bit more difficult. But we've still got a few weeks before we'll really see what's going to happen there. But yeah, we've got our fingers crossed that for example, the Donald Trump impact over the next few weeks, a lot of it will be reversed, and he'll come back to what people are expecting to be more of a negotiating ploy rather than actually trying to punish other countries. But we're not in the know. We just don't know what's going to happen.
Do you think there's a risk that you're going to have to update your guidance?
Look, as a public company, there's always that risk, and the time will come when we do need to upgrade our guidance if it's different, significantly different from what our guidance has already been given or what general consensus is, and we're certainly looking at that all the time, and we'll certainly upgrade it at the time we need to.
Mm-hmm. The US is such a huge consumer market. I mean, you've been running this business since the early 80s. Have you seen any political situation of a comparable country hit confidence like this in the travel market?
Look, we've been through quite a lot. The first Gulf War in '91, the second, September 11 in 2001, the GFC, and obviously COVID. So my feeling is that from the travel industry, this is going to be a hiccup, but unless things happen and become a lot worse, it'll be a hiccup rather than a major catastrophe. Even in September 11, for example, 2001, the 9/11 thing, we had record profits that year in the end, even though a lot of airlines were grounded for some time, for a month or 6 weeks. So I think this will be something that will be fairly temporary, but obviously we don't know for sure. And it is concerning as a business that, but unfortunately in business, and as you say, we've been in business now for 52 years from Top Deck in '73, so these things come along to test us every now and then, and the only thing we hope is it's nothing like COVID, and I don't think it will be.
Mm. Now, of course, we've seen this tit-for-tat trade war really intensify between the US and China. China now pushing back on Boeing deliveries, in fact, returning one of the planes it had already received. Do you think this is going to affect airlines procuring planes? Is there going to be a downside here for airline or a benefit? Are you hearing anything?
It's very hard to say. China is quite brave in knocking back this big order of Boeing planes. But it must be a worry for Boeing and the US government and in business, because this is quite a significant order, I think. And it's very hard to see how this is going to play out. And I suspect that Donald Trump doesn't even know, so I know even less. But it is a worry. Our business, we've got a significant business in China, but it is mainly domestic travel business, some outbound, but mainly domestic. And we don't think that's going to be dramatically affected, and certainly not in the short term. But some of these problems with airlines, it could be a blessing for some airlines. For example, I know Virgin are having trouble getting enough planes out of Boeing and out of Airbus. So for some airlines, it might be a blessing that they can get the planes they want. But there's no doubt that a trade war and a tariff war like this overall is not great, not for business.
And just a final one. Last time we spoke, you told me that a lack of capacity on the domestic carriers was keeping domestic airfares up in Australia. Conversely, extra capacity was keeping international prices down. What's the situation now?
Look, it hasn't changed dramatically. There is no doubt that the domestic capacity particularly between Virgin, Qantas, Jetstar, hasn't really changed much, hasn't improved much in the last 12 months. And so some extra, airplanes being available through Boeing in particular could change that. But you've got to remember that both Virgin is probably doing an IPO in the next few months, and they certainly don't want fares to go down, and you can't blame them from a business point of view. And Qantas is obviously still going along very well with record profits and that. So I don't see things changing dramatically in the short term domestically. Hopefully there'll be more capacity coming on over the next 6 and 12 months, and that will have an impact, a good impact on airfares for consumers. Internationally, we're seeing more and more capacity coming in, including Trans-Pacific out of the States. And that's going to be a bit of an issue if that traffic, particularly out of Australia and New Zealand, going to the States is significantly down. And you might start seeing airlines both discounting airfares heavily to the States, as well as perhaps removing some capacity there. But the rest of the international world, whether it's through Asia or onto Europe, we're getting more capacity in, from Qatar and Emirates, it is having a positive impact on airfares in terms of, the airfares are becoming more affordable, which is something we like. Not always good for the airlines, of course.
Graham Turner, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.